So, as we know, big beginning of this week really was sort of 5 years since Brexit, and of course you had all the Brexiteers moaning that Keir Starmer wasn't doing any party or fireworks or something else to mark the occasion of 5 years since Brexit. Oh, how wonderful everything's been going. Meanwhile, of course, when you look at opinion polls, public opinion, is very, very, very much turned against Brexit very, very, very quickly. And I just want to remind you guys, because I keep on bringing this up, like, you look back to 2016 and everything else, and sort of when people were sort of talking about Brexit even 5 years ago, people were talking about the opinion polls not shifting, like this, what we are seeing right now, for at least another 5 years. So we have seen very, very quickly regrets, as I suppose we should probably call it, kick in very, very quickly, realizing like what a disaster it has been. We've seen even in reform constituencies, people wanting a closer relationship with the EU over that of the United States. And hey, what did I say about, beware the orange typhoon? That's going to blow us straight back onto the shores of Europe. So we are going to be looking at something though, because there were Brexiteers obviously celebrating. Two in particular that we are going to sort of go through. First of all, today we are going to go through Priti Patel because yes, she wrote something. Of course, in the anniversary of Brexit, complaining about how we are silently being rejoined, and then of course tomorrow we will go over what Nigel Farage wrote about how only he and Reform are the ones who can, quote, somehow solve Brexit. And if you saw his little interview on Radio 4 very recently, once again, it's all style, substances, and no actual substantive policy, because the biggest problem that we always said back in the day was that Brexit was all talk and no substantive policy, or what would be the single biggest foreign and domestic policy change in our history since World War II. So let's have a look what Priti Patel had to say before we get on to Nigel Farage tomorrow. So, or well, at least the next video. Anyway, as always, before we do go on into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and of course the subscribe button down below. There are links to my Patreon page, the one foundation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. And of course, twas Wednesday yesterday, so if you are a member of the Patreon or you are a Pony Club member, you will have access to those videos. So, as always, let's crack on then into this. So, this comes from The Telegraph with the title of Labour and Brexit. Are we being silently rejoined? Oh, Priti Patel. Anyway, on Monday, Keir Starmer will now surely but surely start his journey of capitulation. I always love how it's described as this, like, capitulation, when in reality, it's very, very much a win-win situation for both sides, like, on this. Anyway, he's going to start his journey of capitulation back to the EU with its very clear mission to make Britain covertly rejoin the European Union. You can't make Britain covertly rejoin the European Union. The European Union is very, very open about its discussions, trade deals, and etc. It has talked about for years. You cannot sort of do this very covertly on that. Anyway, she continues. Brexit was a generational vote of confidence in Britain. Was it? It's always a vote of something in Britain, but maybe not confidence. Maybe it was certainly against, David Cameron. Lots of people, again, if you ever speak to people, lots of people voted not for any of like the big Brexit beliefs or anything like that. They voted just because they wanted to spit in David Cameron's face and thought that that was the best way to do it at the time. Lots of people voted for very different reasons. Anyway, back to this. We left the EU at a time when the world faced and continues to face extraordinary challenges. The economic decline of the EU, the EU is not, quote, economically declining. What is happening is the world as an economy is getting bigger. And the EU is always going to be part of that world economy. Doesn't matter that there are these new emerging markets, because sooner or later those two will peter off and just become like the EU. Then what do we do? Do we join another emerging market? Because, you know, the market that we have quote shackled ourselves to in the Asia Pacific region is now dying in a decaying corpse. So we've got to, I don't know, go somewhere else. Again, free market fundamentalists. That's all there are behind this. So, anyway, she continues. Well, back to it. So, the economic decline of the EU, the emergence of now new trading markets, and of course, genuine commitments to Britain to preserve free trade and open markets. Well, that hasn't turned out that way, especially when you are looking at what Donald Trump is doing on that front. But the vote also spoke to our now shared hopes and aspirations as a country. Yet a promise that Britain could do better by taking control of our laws and reclaiming our sovereignty. We were always in control of our laws and our sovereignty. But, you know, there you go. And yet Keir Starmer can't see it. Perhaps because he's the man who does not believe in Britain. But, you know, he happens to be the Prime Minister. He happens to be running for a party. I would probably think he, you know, does believe in Britain. Just not in the way, of course, like Priti Patel. Starmer didn't just oppose Brexit. He voted to block Brexit 48 times in Parliament and enthusiastically also energetically campaigned for a second referendum with the reintroduction of a free movement of people. Again, why couldn't we have had a second referendum? That is always, I would say, the biggest argument of these people. Why couldn't we have a second referendum? If having the first referendum was meant to be this really important moment, why then couldn't we have a second referendum? Like, why were they always so scared about having a second referendum, unless they were actually realizing that actually maybe people might have changed their minds at that moment? Maybe people weren't as enthusiastic as Brexit as they thought because of what they were currently trying to do, of course. And of course, the reintroduction of the free movement of people. He said that he prefers the World Economic Forum in Davos to Westminster. And he is now constantly called for a closer alignment with the continent now on several issues. Well, yes, because they're our biggest trading partner. why wouldn't you call for more close alignment with them on that? Anyway, whichever way you cut it, this is the man who cannot imagine a global Britain. Well, again, what does that actually mean? We were asking all this time. What does global Britain actually mean? Well, our nation's horizons are now boundless, and we live in a country that believes in freedom to succeed. Again, what does that actually mean? What does that mean in terms of policy? Oh, global Britain. Okay, what does that mean in policy? What policy are you going to do? Because you can go back to the 2016 referendum and you can probably see what a lot of Brexiteers were campaigning on, that they were going to end globalization. Global Britain is a tacit call for more globalization, not less, which is what a lot of Brexiteer voters openly said at the time, that they wanted less globalization. So Priti Patel right now at odds with a lot of people who voted for Brexit as an end to globalization. So, and also a country that believes in freedom to succeed. What freedoms, to quote, to succeed do you not apparently have? There you go. Anyway, she continues. I'm a Brexit patriot who campaigned long before the referendum to leave the EU for this very reason. During the decades of EU membership, the UK inherited thousands upon thousands of pages of laws and legal code covering every aspect of how we live our lives, much of which was incompatible with our own principles of common law. Oh yes, the Conservatives, known for upholding the principles of common law. But The lawyer Starmer is now already making overtures for more regulatory alignment all over again, starting with a migration deal, as well as moving towards surrendering yet more British strategic assets like our fisheries. Again, no prime minister was ever and will ever go to the war for the British fishing industry. It is like saying that, I don't know, Priti Patel is going to go to the wall for Harrods. Like, she is absolutely going to stand Harrods, just, and hang the rest of the British economy, but Harrods, my god, she is going to go to the wall for Harrods. Exactly. It doesn't make a lot of sense, really, does it? I know Telegraph readers will agree that this is not what our country needs, and above all else, it needs now a deeply regressive and unambitious vision of Britain. Starmer is once more sentencing Brexit to bureaucratic death by his recidivist actions, shackling Britain to the floundering economies of France and Germany will just expedite the social cause of our economic decline his unqualified chancellor has set for us. France and German economies do pretty well. Europe as an economy does pretty well. The only difference is that it's not this. The line is not going like that. The line, goes up very, very slowly, very noticeably. But because, the line is not, doing a vertical trajectory path to the moon, to someone like Priti Patel, they're just absolutely failing economies. There is more to economies than just growth. And I think we are really starting to reach that point. I think even Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer are going to have to turn around themselves at some point and go, well, actually, we're really going to have to look at what other stuff we can pursue instead of just going for growth and what makes an economy good. And there have been lots of people, even themselves, in stuff they said in the past, know that as well. So I think eventually there will be a turnaround on some of this stuff. And like I say, we know lots of Labour MPs are pushing now to start looking at alternative ideas and stuff like this. We know that is happening in the Labour Party. We know they will not be able to resist it for too long. Because again, here's Starmer, very pragmatic when it comes to it. Look at how he's approaching all this EU stuff. Anyway, here we go. Outside the EU, what have we achieved? She says. What have we achieved so much? From unpicking thousands of rules and regulations imposed on us, we haven't unpicked those rules, but there you go, to delivering the fasting rolls out in the pandemic. Again, we didn't. That didn't happen. Signing new free trade deals with growing economies, such as across the world, such as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. Again, not going to be really good to our economy on that. We still haven't really fully joined it yet at all. And, to get out of it is actually really easy. We only need to give 6 months notice, but there you go. All things, of course, we would have never seen become a reality had Starmer and his Brexit-denying Labour Party had their way. Well, maybe we would have had a second referendum. Why were all the Brexiteers so terrified of having a second referendum? Why are they so scared of having another one? If Brexit is meant to be an amazing thing, why are they so scared of having another vote on it? So, at the time when we should, like the United States, be unleashing our sovereign democratic freedoms by ensuring that the government is working for you and answerable to the British people. Oh, you mean, giving pretty much uncontrolled and fettered access to a billionaire who's going to do God knows what kind of economic damage? Conservatives sometimes love to talk about Javier Milei in Argentina, but they don't actually talk about what's going on in Argentina, what he is actually doing to Argentina, and how bad it is really getting for Argentina. Like I say, I think if things start to go wrong, they are suddenly going to become very quiet talking about what's going on in the United States or Elon Musk as well, and of course Donald Trump. Like I say, I think sooner or later something really bad's going to happen in the US. It is absolutely inevitable. Instead, Starmer chooses to insult the intelligence of hardworking families and businesses, forcing them to bankroll his ideological dream of putting Britain back under the EU control. I would love that if that were true. Pretty sad, but it's not. America is our closest and most powerful ally, and I can tell you, having returned from the inauguration of President Trump, the mood towards us is pretty clear. Our friend, again, it's not considering people in the administration say that they've got Britain over a barrel, and if we don't do what they want us to do, they will crash our economy. Yeah, totally good friends there we've got in that administration, right, Patel? Anyway, the friendship and affinity between our two peoples is very profound. Our economies are now uniquely connected with millions of interactions each day, supporting over 300 billion now in our trading relationship. Our countries have stood by each other in challenging times, working together to end the Cold War and securing economic freedom and prosperity through our enduring ties. Doesn't mean that we should, have to accept their trade deals, anything like that. And certainly, why are we not seeing that friendship reciprocated? As we've said, when you've got people in the Trump administration who want to trash our economy so that they can boot out Keir Starmer. That's the very same economy you are also living in as well, Priti Patel. Anyway, now is the time for this government to get serious about the opportunities ahead and build upon our foundations and make progress on the UK-US trade deal, which could add billions to the economy, raise wages, and undo some of the damage caused by Labour's economic mismanagement. Certainly, it would add questionable amounts of money to our economy. But again, what else would we have to accept? I don't think the British people, as they've said time and time again, to what some of the stuff America has been asking to do for us, that trade deal, they would turn around and go, actually, no, thank you, not very much. So, as we've discovered from Labour's disastrous attempt to surrender the Chagas Islands, sorry, that was you who did that. That was James Cleverly who did that. And if you're talking about the fact that the cost of these negotiations has gone up, well, then you can blame people like Nigel Farage and Donald Trump who decided to stop those negotiations and mess them up. I don't see you blaming them, Patel. Anyway, when Labour negotiates, Britain loses. So instead of trying to cozy up to Europe and concede our freedoms, Starmer must now stand up for Brexit Britain. No evidence there that Patel put forward that we are, quote, secretly being rejoined. She doesn't really lay out a good argument for why Brexit is good or why it is being a success. All the things that she's laid out have been proven, I don't know, countless thousands of times. She doesn't talk about, the poll numbers about that, what people actually think currently about Brexit. Like I say, people like Patel are in a cult. Like Brexit has become a cult where you cannot believe the reality of what it has done or what it was done to this country because it always had secret objectives, which was to turn like the UK into this free market fundamentalist paradise, which they did not want to fulfill, which most of the British public, well, the vast majority of the British public do not want that to be the case, which would mean getting rid of the NHS, getting rid of the social safety net, getting rid of the welfare state, which, bear in mind, Nigel Farage would gladly do in any moment. Meanwhile, of course, as always, let me know what you think to Patel's bizarre talk about Brexit. As always, it's Priti Patel. She's around for some reason. I don't know why, but hey, Badnock brought her back into, the shadow cabinet, even though she is really bad. And not many other Conservatives really like her, as we recently discovered very recently in another previous video. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.